They said the city had forgotten magic, that it had drowned beneath smoke, gears, and gold. But when the lights dimmed and the curtain rose, the crowd held its breath, waiting for the impossible. And tonight, the impossible was about to happen. The grand tent of the Celestia circus shimmered under 1,000 lanterns. Music thundered through the air, trumpets, laughter, applause, all swirling together like a living storm. On the center stage, a young woman in a tattered red cloak steadied her breath behind a wall of mirrors. Elara Vale, the assistant no one bothered to name on the posters. Her master, Magnifico, strutted before the audience, tall hat, painted smile, ego sharp as a blade. "Ladies and gentlemen," he cried, "prepare to witness the great vanishing inferno." The crowd roared, but in the shadows, it was Elara who made the tricks work, who slipped the wires, turned the gears, lit the smoke. She wanted to be seen, just once. As the orchestra struck its final note, she stepped forward with trembling hands. The mirrors spun. Flames coiled like serpents around her wrists, illusionary light dancing over her skin. But something was wrong. The air grew hot, too real, too alive. The mirrors cracked with a hiss. And then, fire erupted. Real fire. The crowd screamed. Magnifico's grin collapsed into horror. Elara stumbled backward, her hands glowing bright as embers, unable to stop it. Sparks flew from her fingertips, scorching the curtains. For a heartbeat, she saw faces in the flames, wolves, eyes like molten silver. A man rose from the front row. He didn't flinch as the fire spread. His gaze met hers, calm, commanding, ancient. He moved with impossible speed, leaping onto the stage. The inferno bent around him, wind swirling like a living thing. He caught her before she fell, his hand burning with the same golden light that filled her veins. And then, darkness. When Elara awoke, the circus was gone. The lights, the noise, the smell of burnt silk, all vanished. She lay in a forest clearing under the pale glow of the moon. Her hands were clean, unburned, but the stranger stood nearby, half-shadowed by the trees. "Who are you?" she whispered. He didn't answer immediately. His eyes glowed faintly, not with reflection, but power. "You shouldn't be here," he said at last. "And you shouldn't have that kind of magic." Elara pushed herself upright, confusion spiraling into fear. Magic? That was a trick. It was part of the act. "No." His voice deepened, rough with warning. "That fire wasn't illusion. You called it. And now they'll come for you." The words sent a chill racing through her veins. They. He looked toward the woods, and for a fleeting second, she swore she saw movement there, silver eyes watching from the dark, a low growl echoing through the night. "I've said too much," the stranger murmured. He turned away, cloak rustling. "Stay hidden, Elara Vale. You're not safe in their world anymore." "How do you know my name?" she called out. He paused. The moonlight caught his profile, sharp, beautiful, inhuman. "Because I've been searching for you," he said, "since before you were born." Before she could speak, he vanished into the mist. Elara sat alone in the silence, the scent of smoke still clinging to her hair. Her hands trembled as she held them up to the moonlight, and fire flickered once more, faint and gold. Her life as a magician's assistant was over. Whatever she was now, it had only just begun. If you're as spellbound as Elara under the circus lights, don't forget to subscribe, because this story is about to ignite. The night had turned to grey dawn when Elara stirred again. Cold dew clung to her lashes, but the scent that filled the air wasn't forest smoke. It was cedar, leather, and rain. When her eyes fluttered open, she found herself lying on a velvet couch in a vast room lined with books and weapons. Firelight licked the stone walls, and outside she could hear wolves howling somewhere far away. Her pulse quickened. The circus, the fire, the stranger, it all came flooding back. "You're awake." The voice came from the shadows. The man who stepped forward looked almost unreal in the morning light, tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair brushing his jaw. His eyes were silver, not the color of metal, but of moonlight. He moved like someone who didn't need to prove his strength. Elara pushed herself up, clutching the blanket. "Where am I?" "A safe place," he said simply. "For now." Her gaze darted around. "I didn't ask to be brought here." He didn't respond at first, only studied her, not with the arrogance of her old master, but with quiet calculation. Finally he said, "You set half the city on fire. If I hadn't pulled you out, the king's guards would have taken you." She stiffened. "The king?" He nodded. "My brother." Something about the way he said it, low, edged with resentment, made her heartbeat stumble. "You're the Alpha King's brother." "Was," he corrected. "I was exiled years ago." The silence between them thickened. He poured water into a silver cup and handed it to her. His hand brushed hers, a fleeting spark, like the echo of her fire. "What do you want from me?" she asked. He looked straight into her eyes. "Nothing, but your power. It called to me. I couldn't ignore it." "My power?" she echoed, disbelief curling through her voice. "I don't have any power. It was a trick that went wrong." "Say that again," he murmured, stepping closer, "and the air itself will prove you wrong." The flames in the fireplace flared, bright and fierce. Elara's breath caught as the gold shimmered in her palms again. She clenched her fists, forcing it back. But it only made the fire grow hotter. His expression softened, almost sad. "You see, it isn't illusion. You were born with it." "Why me?" Her voice cracked. "Why not anyone else?" "Because you're not like anyone else." Hours passed before she found the courage to explore the mansion. It wasn't empty. She felt eyes on her everywhere, a movement at the edge of her vision, a growl behind the door. The scent of pine and fir hung in the halls. She reached the entrance and pushed the heavy doors open. Morning sunlight spilled over a courtyard surrounded by towering trees. But as she stepped forward, the world changed. Wolves. Dozens of them emerged from the mist, sleek, silver, and silent. Their eyes glowed amber as they surrounded her, low growls rumbling through the air. Her throat tightened. She took a step back, but the nearest wolf lunged forward, not attacking, just blocking her path. Then, a single word cut through the tension like thunder. "Enough." The wolves froze instantly. Ronan appeared at the top of the stone stairs, bare-chested now, his skin marked with faint silver lines that pulsed faintly beneath the light. Not tattoos, but something older. The wolves bowed their heads as he descended. Elara could barely speak. "They listen to you." "They serve me," he said simply, "but not by choice, by blood." "And what happens if I try to leave?" He stopped in front of her, so close she could see the faint scar at his collarbone. "You won't make it far. The forest obeys no one but me." Something flickered in his gaze then, not warning, not cruelty, but something darker. "You're not safe from my brother's court," he said quietly. "Or from me." The words sent a shiver through her, not because they frightened her, but because part of her believed them. She turned away, trying to steady her breath. "Then tell me why I'm here. Why save me if you're just going to keep me trapped?" Ronan's jaw tightened. "Because the moment your power appeared, every shifter in the kingdom felt it. My brother will come for you. And when he does, he won't be as merciful as I am." Elara met his eyes. "You call this mercy?" "You're alive," he said. "That's more mercy than most receive." That night she wandered through the corridors again, drawn by the sound of the wind. She found Ronan standing on a balcony, moonlight painting his features in pale silver. He didn't turn when she approached. "My brother will think I took you to use against him," he said quietly. "He won't believe I'm protecting you." "Why are you protecting me?" she asked. He looked at her then, and for the first time, the mask slipped. "Because once, someone like you burned our world to ash, and I won't let history repeat itself." The air between them shifted, charged, fragile, alive. Elara whispered, "You talk like you knew her." His gaze darkened. "I did." Before she could ask more, he stepped closer, the scent of rain and wild pine surrounding her. "Go to sleep, Elara. You'll need your strength. Tomorrow we start controlling that fire before it consumes you." When he left, she leaned on the cold stone railing, staring at the distant trees swaying in the moonlight. Somewhere out there, the Alpha King ruled, a name she'd never heard, a danger she didn't understand. But her instincts whispered that this was only the beginning. The flames weren't done with her, and neither was he. The next morning came shrouded in fog, the kind that swallowed sound and made the forest seem endless. Elara stood barefoot in the courtyard, the chill seeping through her bones as she faced Ronan. He had promised to train her, to teach her control, though part of her suspected his real goal was to keep her contained. "Breathe," he said, circling her. His voice was calm, deliberate, but his presence radiated command. "Magic isn't forced, it's summoned." "I didn't summon it," she muttered, keeping her eyes on the wet stones. "It just happened." He stopped in front of her. "Then make it happen again." Elara exhaled, lifting her hands. The air trembled, heat flickering beneath her skin. A spark flared to life between her palms, gold at first, then white-hot. For a heartbeat, it was beautiful. Then, just as quickly, it turned violent. The flame burst outward, blasting through the mist. Ronan was there in an instant, catching her wrist, grounding her with a steady grip. His touch felt like stone under a storm, unyielding but safe. The fire sputtered out. "Again!" he said, not letting go. "I can't—" "You can," he interrupted, his eyes locked on hers. "You're not losing control. You're afraid of it." Their breath mingled in the space between them. The air thickened with something unspoken, tension that was no longer just about power. She tore her gaze away, pulse racing, and tried again. This time the flames coiled smoothly in her palms like ribbons of light. "Good," he murmured. "Now keep your mind steady. Feel it, but don't let it feel you." The lesson stretched for hours. Each time she faltered, he was there. Calm, patient, his movements precise, as though he had done this 100 times before. But every time their hands touched, every glance that lingered too long, the line between teacher and protector began to blur. By dusk, Elara's arms ached, her magic spent. Yet something inside her burned brighter than ever. When she closed her eyes, she saw flashes, fragments that weren't hers. A woman in silver robes, 2 men standing beside her beneath a red moon, 1 crown, 2 brothers, blood between them. She gasped, stumbling. Ronan caught her before she hit the ground. "Elara, I saw something," she whispered. "A place that doesn't exist. 2 of you, no, not you, but—" She pressed her temples. It felt like a memory. Ronan's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. His silence told her more than words could. "Do you know what it means?" she asked softly. He looked away. "Some memories aren't yours. Some belong to what's inside you." "What's inside me?" Ronan met her eyes again, silver, haunted. Something the world thought it buried long ago. That night the wind changed. A low howl echoed through the forest, not the wolves this time, but something darker. Ronan went still. "What is it?" Elara asked. He turned toward the window. "Hunters." Before she could respond, the mansion erupted in chaos. The gates crashed open. Shadows moved through the fog. Armored men, their swords etched with runes that shimmered faintly blue. Ronan drew his blade in one fluid motion. "Stay behind me." "No." Elara stepped forward, her pulse hammering. "They're after me. I won't let you fight alone." He gave her a sharp look, half warning, half admiration. "Then control it this time." The first of the hunters lunged through the doorway. Ronan met him head-on, steel clashing against steel, movements fast as lightning. The wolves poured into the courtyard, their snarls tearing through the night. Elara's fear broke open like a flood. The heat returned, wild and blinding. The ground cracked beneath her feet, fire spreading in spirals. The hunters shouted, stumbling back as the air shimmered with power. Ronan turned, his eyes wide, not with fear, but recognition. "Elara, stop!" But she couldn't. The world exploded in gold. Fire and wind, light and darkness, all swirling around her like a living storm. Through the chaos, she felt something burning across her chest, a mark etching itself into her skin, glowing with fierce, ancient energy. The symbol blazed bright under the moonlight, a crescent intertwined with shadow. The wolves howled, the hunters fell to their knees. Ronan's voice reached her through the roar of the flames. The mark of the hidden moon. The power finally broke, leaving her gasping on the stone floor. The mark still shimmered faintly across her collarbone. "What does it mean?" she asked, trembling. Ronan knelt beside her, brushing his fingers just above the glowing lines. "It means you're not just a magician. You're the one the prophecy spoke of." "What prophecy?" His voice was barely a whisper. "The one that says a woman marked by the hidden moon will rise when the Alpha brothers stand divided, and she'll choose who lives and who falls." Her breath caught. "That's impossible." He shook his head. "It's fate." Outside, the forest fell silent again, but the sky was changing, the moon dimming behind a veil of clouds. Elara looked at her hands, the faint golden light still pulsing beneath her skin. She had always thought her life was small, invisible, a series of illusions for the crowd. But now the truth stared back at her like a living flame. She wasn't just a girl with borrowed magic. She was the spark that could burn kingdoms, and somewhere far beyond the woods, the Alpha King had already heard her name. The morning after the battle smelled of ash and silence. Smoke still curled from the shattered walls of Ronan's mansion, drifting through the ruins like lost souls. Elara woke to the sound of chains rattling and realized she wasn't in the forest anymore. Her wrists were bound in silver cuffs, cold, heavy, and burning. When she tried to summon even a spark of flame, the cuffs shimmered, absorbing the light into nothingness. The wolves were gone. Ronan was gone. Only the faint memory of his voice remained. "Stay behind me." A pair of guards flanked her, faces hidden behind black helms etched with the crest of the royal house, a crescent moon divided by a sword. They marched her through vast corridors of black stone and flickering torchlight until they reached two towering doors, gilded with gold and claw marks. The royal throne room. When the doors swung open, the world changed. A river of light spilled across marble floors, reflecting on silver pillars carved with wolves mid-howl. At the far end sat the Alpha King, Kyle. His presence hit her like gravity. He looked nothing like Ronan, yet somehow everything like him. Same power, same eyes, though Kyle's burned brighter, edged with something sharper, command. His crown was forged of moonstone and steel. Power rolled off him in waves, pressing the air flat. Elara's breath caught, her pulse matching the steady rhythm of his gaze as he studied her, not as a prisoner but as something familiar. "So," Kyle said, his voice deep as a storm. The magician with fire in her veins. Elara lifted her chin, despite the chains biting into her skin. "You're the Alpha King." "I am." He rose slowly, descending the dais with deliberate grace. Every step echoed through the hall. "And you, Elara Vale, have caused more chaos in a week than most armies in a lifetime." "I didn't ask for any of this," she said, her voice trembling despite her effort to sound defiant. "I don't even understand what I am." "You're a threat." He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could see the faint scar slicing through his right eyebrow, but also a reminder. Of what? He studied her in silence. Then, almost softly, "Of someone I once loved." The words made the ground tilt beneath her. He wasn't speaking like a king. He was remembering. Kyle circled her slowly, his eyes tracing the faint mark that still glowed on her collarbone. "That mark. I've seen it before. Centuries ago on a woman who stood between two brothers." She swallowed hard. "And what happened to her?" "She chose," he said. "And in choosing, she destroyed us both." Elara's heart hammered. Images from her visions flickered again, the woman in silver robes, the two men beside her beneath a red moon. Her voice shook. "You and Ronan." Cale's jaw tightened. You remember? I saw it. But it doesn't mean it's real. He leaned in, his voice low and dangerous. You carry her soul, Elara. You are her. The universe gave you back to finish what you started. She shook her head, refusing to believe. That's impossible. Kyle smiled, not cruelly, but as if pitying her. I thought the same once. He turned from her, walking back toward the throne. My brother hides behind rebellion and excuses, but he's still what he's always been, a thief. He stole from me before, my crown, my bloodline, you. His hand clenched the hilt of his sword. Now I offer you a choice. Elara's pulse quickened. You will serve me as my royal mage, Cale said, his tone cool as steel. Help me end Ronan's uprising and bring peace to this realm. Do that, and he will live. And if I refuse, she whispered. His gaze hardened. Then I'll see to it that he's exiled beyond the Shadowlands, where no moon ever rises. Her heart twisted. She could still feel Ronan's hand steadying hers during their training, his voice telling her to breathe. The thought of him banished to eternal darkness because of her was unbearable. Kyle stepped closer, voice softening like velvet around a knife. You want the truth. This realm cannot survive two alphas. One must rule and the other must fall. But with your power I can make sure it's the right brother. She met his eyes, searching for a lie. And what makes you think I'll help you? Because deep down, Cale said, you still remember loving me. The air between them froze. For a heartbeat, Elara couldn't breathe. She wanted to deny it, to scream, to curse him. But part of her did remember. A fleeting warmth, a promise whispered under a red moon. A kiss that tasted like fire and rain. Her mind said no. Her soul whispered otherwise. That night they locked her in a high tower draped in moonlight. From the window she could see the sprawling capital below, its silver rooftops glinting under the stars, its walls patrolled by soldiers wearing the same crest as Cale's. Elara stared at her glowing mark reflected in the window pane. She pressed her fingers against it, feeling the faint thrum of power beneath her skin. If she obeyed Kyle, Ronan would live, but as a ghost of himself, banished and broken. If she defied the king, she'd doom them both. Her tears fell silently onto the stone floor. Then she straightened. Fine, she whispered to the empty room. I'll play your game. The next day, she began her new life as the royal mage. The palace mages whispered as she passed, the woman marked by the moon, the fire-bearer, the one who'd melted a battalion of hunters in a single breath. Kyle watched her from the dais, his expression unreadable. He trained her himself in the ways of royal sorcery, guiding her hand over the ancient runes carved into the palace floor. Each lesson felt like a test, a dance between temptation and control. You're holding back, he murmured one evening, stepping close behind her as she traced a rune in fire. Why? Because power without restraint burns everything, she said. Sometimes, he replied softly. That's exactly what's needed. His words unsettled her, his nearness even more. Days turned to weeks, and though Elara played the obedient mage, every night she plotted. She memorized guard rotations, found hidden passages behind the tapestry halls, and used her lessons to disguise messages written in flame, messages that only one man would recognize, Ronan. Each flicker of her power carried her silent promise through the night sky. I haven't chosen him. Not yet. Her magic was changing too, growing sharper, more alive, tied not just to fire, but to emotion. When she dreamed, she saw both brothers, Kyle crowned in moonlight, Ronan shrouded in shadow, and always that same voice from the past echoing through her mind. When the hidden moon rises, one will burn, one will bow. Elara woke from that dream drenched in sweat, her mark pulsing like a heartbeat. She knew then the choice Kyle offered wasn't truly between him and Ronan, it was between destiny and defiance, and she would not bow to either. The palace bells tolled midnight, 12 hollow chimes that shook the air like warnings from the gods. Elara stood in her chamber, staring out at the horizon where the moon hung full and swollen. For weeks, Kyle had spoken of peace and strategy, of treaties sealed with fire and submission. But tonight, she saw the truth written in the banners rising from the city below, silver wolves on black flags, marching toward war. Kyle was no longer waiting. He was coming for his brother, and she was done playing his captive mage. Elara pulled the silver cuffs from her wrists, the ones meant to suppress her magic. She had spent nights whispering ancient words beneath her breath, weaving fire into illusion, melting their bindings thread by thread. When the last fragment fell to the floor, she flexed her fingers. The room flickered, shadows shifting like water. The air itself seemed to sigh in relief. She pressed her palm against the wall, whispering the words Ronan had taught her during their training. Magic is will. Shape it. Don't fear it. The stone rippled. A secret doorway unfolded before her, one Kyle had never noticed, though she had learned of it from the palace's old books. Heart-pounding, she slipped through. Guards patrolled the corridors below, their armor gleaming in torchlight. But Elara wasn't there anymore, or at least they didn't see her. She moved cloaked in illusion, a flicker of moonlight where her body should have been. She crossed the courtyard, passed through the gates, and ran into the forest. The world beyond the palace was different now, alive in ways she'd never felt before. The trees breathed magic, the wind whispered her name. The mark on her skin glowed softly with every step. She didn't stop until the city lights were only a faint glimmer behind her. Hours passed. The air thickened with fog and memory. Then, through the mist, a flicker of movement. A scent she remembered. "Ronan," she breathed. He stepped out of the shadows, his silver eyes catching the moonlight. He looked exhausted, his jaw unshaven, his shirt torn, a faint scar running down his arm. But when he saw her, his expression cracked open in disbelief and relief all at once. Elara. Before she could speak, he pulled her into his arms. The world went quiet, save for the pounding of her heart against his chest. "I thought you were gone," he murmured into her hair. "I felt you through the bond. And then nothing." "I escaped," she said, pulling back just enough to look at him. "Kyle was preparing for war. He's marching on you, Ronan. I couldn't let him—" He cupped her face, his thumb brushing away the dirt on her cheek. "You shouldn't have risked it." "You would have done the same," she said. A faint, rueful smile tugged at his lips. "Always." They made camp beneath the ancient oaks, a fire flickering between them. Elara told him everything. Kyle's decree, the prophecy, the mark that burned brighter with each passing night. Ronan listened in silence, his gaze distant. Finally she asked, "What are you not telling me?" His eyes met hers, heavy with truth. "Kyle was never meant to be king." She frowned. "What do you mean?" "I was born first," he said quietly. "But my blood wasn't pure enough for the council. They called me the half-wolf prince, said I carried too much of my mother's human lineage. Kyle took the throne and I left before I was forced out." She stared at him, realization dawning. "You never wanted the crown." He shook his head. "No. All I ever wanted was to live beyond it, to find something real." His gaze lingered on her then, soft, unguarded. "And I found you." Elara's breath caught. The fire crackled, throwing gold against his face. She wanted to speak, to tell him she felt the same, but the ground trembled beneath them before she could. A low howl echoed through the woods, dozens, then hundreds. Ronan rose instantly, his wolf senses sharpening. "He's here." Elara turned toward the horizon. Between the trees, she saw torchlight moving like a river of flame. Kale's army, the prophecy's first tremor. The battle began with a roar that shook the sky. Wolves clashed beneath the blood-red moon, their howls filling the night. Kale's soldiers, cloaked in silver armor, charged through the forest. But what they didn't know was that the forest no longer obeyed them. Elara stood at the center of it all, her eyes glowing gold. time to remind them what illusion really means, she whispered. She raised her hands, and the air rippled, the forest shifted, twisting into endless paths and phantom figures. Wolves turned into mist, then back into men. Trees became armies, shadows became weapons. Kyle's soldiers stumbled through false terrain, slashing at ghosts that dissolved in their grasp. Ronan fought beside her, his sword flashing with each strike, his movements precise and lethal. But the enemy kept coming, wave after wave, drawn by Kyle's fury and the scent of prophecy. Elara's illusions deepened. She wove her circus craft with her power, creating entire mirages, blazing tigers leaping from flame, phantom wolves striking from above, soldiers fleeing from visions of their own deaths. The forest itself became her stage, her performance, her vengeance. But the power demanded more. It clawed at her chest, begging to consume her. "Elara!" Ronan shouted, slashing through another soldier. "You have to stop! You're burning too fast!" She shook her head, sweat glistening down her temple. "If I stop, we lose!" The mark on her skin blazed like molten gold. Her magic spiraled outward, too bright, too wild. She screamed, and the forest erupted in fire. Ronan ran to her, shielding her with his body as an explosion of light tore through the battlefield. The air cracked, the illusion shattered. When the flames finally died, the soldiers were gone, either fled or fallen. Smoke rose over the ruins of the forest. Elara knelt on the ground, trembling. "We did it." Then she looked up. Ronan was still standing, but barely. His shirt was soaked in blood, the wound deep beneath his ribs. "No," she whispered, crawling toward him. "No, no, no." He caught her hand before she could heal him. "Don't waste your strength. You've already given too much." Tears streaked down her cheeks. "You're not dying on me." He smiled faintly, his voice rough but tender. "You really think I'd leave before this is over?" His fingers brushed her mark, now dimming to silver. When the moon turns red, the world decides who it belongs to. You have to survive it, Elara. She shook her head, clutching him to her chest. "I can't without you." He leaned close, his breath a whisper against her ear. "Yes, you can. Because you're the fire that started all of this." Then his body went limp. Elara screamed into the night, her magic flaring again, wild, grief-stricken, unstoppable. The flames rose high, reaching for the red moon above, and for the first time in centuries, the heavens trembled. Far away, in his war tent, Kale lifted his head as the firelight flickered. He felt it, her pain, her power, the mark calling to him. He whispered her name like a vow and a warning all at once. Elara. And the prophecy turned its next page. The night bled red across the sky. The moon loomed massive and merciless, hanging like a wound above the forest that still smouldered from battle. The trees whispered her name in crackling embers. Elara. She knelt beside Ronan's still body, his breath shallow, his skin ashen. The firelight danced across his face, they're too quiet, too still. She pressed trembling hands against his chest, trying to summon her magic, but it flickered weakly like dying candlelight. "No," she whispered. "You don't get to leave me, not now." Her power sparked once, gold and fragile, before fading into nothing. The mark on her skin had dulled to grey. The prophecy's power was slipping away, piece by piece, and with it, so was he. A rustle broke through the silence. Leaves parted, and a shadow stepped through the haze. Kyle. The Alpha King stood framed in moonlight, his armor streaked with blood, not all of it his own. His eyes burned like molten silver, grief and fury swirling behind them. "Elara," he said softly, "I warned you what he would cost you." She rose slowly, every muscle trembling, her hands curling into fists. "Don't you dare pretend this was mercy. You sent your army to slaughter him." "I sent them to end a rebellion," Kyle said, voice low and controlled. "But the rebellion wasn't his. It was yours." Her heart hammered. "You don't understand what you've done." "Oh, I do," he murmured, stepping closer. "You've awakened something that should have stayed buried. You've tied your fate to a man cursed by the same blood that betrayed me once before. He stopped a few feet away, gaze flicking to Ronan's body. For the first time, the mask of the king cracked. Sorrow flashed in his eyes, raw and unguarded. "He was my brother," Kyle whispered, "and once I would have died for him." The wind howled, carrying the scent of ash and blood between them. Elara's voice broke. "Then die for him now." Magic surged from the ground, a desperate, untamed current bursting from her heart. It coiled around her like fire and starlight, feeding off rage and love and loss. The mark on her arm flared, not gold this time, but blinding white. Kyle staggered back, eyes wide. "What are you doing?" "I'm ending this," Elara said. "All of it." The prophecy's words thundered in her mind, ancient, relentless. One must fall, one must rise, and one must break the bond of blood. But she finally understood. It wasn't a prophecy of death, it was a prophecy of choice. One had to fall from power, one had to rise from love, and one, her, had to break the curse that chained them both. She spread her arms, the air trembling around her. "Moon above, witness me," she whispered. "By my blood, I release the chains of theirs." The light exploded outward, a shock wave rippling through the forest. The flames died. The sky itself seemed to inhale. Kyle cried out, clutching his chest as the ancient power inside him shattered like glass. The mark of the Alpha, that old inherited dominance, burned away from his skin, and Ronan gasped. His eyes flew open, glowing silver again, his chest heaving with breath. "Elara," he rasped. She turned toward him, smiling through her tears. But as she stepped closer, her knees buckled. The light around her faded. The power that had once danced at her fingertips drained away, leaving her pale and trembling. "Elara!" Ronan caught her just before she fell. "What did you do?" "I broke the curse," she whispered, voice soft but steady. "The world doesn't need another Alpha war. It needs peace." He shook his head, tears streaking down his face. "You gave up your magic for us." She touched his cheek. "It wasn't mine to keep. Not if it meant losing you." Behind them, Kyle knelt on the ground, panting. The rage was gone from his eyes, replaced by exhaustion and something like clarity. He looked at them both, the woman he once loved and the brother he nearly destroyed, and for the first time lowered his head. "She's right," Kyle said hoarsely. "The curse was never ours to carry." Ronan helped Elara to her feet, his arm wrapped protectively around her. "Then help me end it properly," he said. The brothers locked eyes, centuries of pain and pride in a single look, and slowly Kyle nodded. Together they stepped beneath the blood moon. The sky began to pale at the edges, dawn creeping like a promise. Ronan turned to Elara, his voice low, reverent. "I once swore I would never claim anyone, not after seeing how the mark bound my brother's heart in chains. But with you—" He brushed his thumb against her pulse, his gaze deep and unflinching. "I want to claim you as my equal, not as a mate bound by fate, but as the choice I make, again and again." Her lips parted, a tremor in her breath. "Then do it." He leaned in, his breath warm against her neck. When his fangs grazed her skin, she didn't flinch. She lifted her chin, meeting him halfway. The bite was gentle, sacred, magic, faint, fragile, but hers flared once more. Gold light bloomed from her mark, not the consuming fire of before, but a quiet shimmer, life renewed. Her eyes opened, glowing faintly with that same light. Ronan pulled back, awe flickering across his face. "Elara, your magic—" She smiled, tears glinting in her lashes. "Looks like love's a stronger spell than I thought." By dawn, the blood moon had set, giving way to the soft gold of morning. The forest, once scorched and broken, breathed again, flowers rising from ash, mist curling like silk around the trees. Kyle stood at the edge of the clearing, watching them in silence. For the first time, the weight on his shoulders seemed lighter. He met Ronan's gaze, then Elara's. "Take care of each other," he said quietly, "and if peace is truly what she's brought us, then I will make sure it lasts." He turned and vanished into the mist, a king without his crown, but finally, a brother again. Elara leaned her head on Ronan's shoulder, their fingers entwined. The sun broke through the branches, bathing them in light. "I thought I'd lost everything," she murmured. Ronan pressed a kiss to her temple. "You found something better." She looked up, her golden eyes reflecting the dawn. "A home?" He smiled. "A beginning." And as the first rays of sunlight brushed across their faces, the faint spark of magic danced again between their palms. Warm, alive, infinite. The curse was broken, the bond was chosen, and love once again had rewritten fate itself.